have batteries in it today?
Yes, I bought batteries for it.
Yay.
So we do have batteries for it.
Yeah, I can hear it too.
Yeah, we need to.
We even bought Duracell. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, it's an old story. We've heard it thousands and thousands of times, each and every one of us. The story of the Good Samaritan. If I asked you who was the neighbor, you're all going to come back and say, the Samaritan. Let's look at this in a new way, a different way, something we haven't thought of before. Now he talks about the Pharisee, and he talks about the Levite. First of all, let's get who these are. The Pharisees would be like our board members today in the church. The Levites would be me. They were the priest of the church. There were certain things that were required of these folks. And part of the things that were required of these folks are a ritual. And this ritual dealt with bathing and being clean and not touching anything unclean. So what these two folks were really doing was taking care of their flock. But we're the first to judge them, right? We judge them as being anything but God's children. And all they were doing is following the law way back in Deuteronomy. Now think about it that way. Think about you, each and every one of us. Think about little things that happen in this church. Some darling decided to kick our sign down. I'm sure all of you noticed that, right? Why do you think they did that? Haters was the first word that I heard everybody say. Except for Jen. You know what Jen said? All churches get vandalized.
True that.
What should we do about it?
Right.
Using this particular thing. Put up another one. That's the first thing we're going to do is put up another one. That one's about headed anyway.
It was loose. I
Yeah.
touched it the other day.
France.
But we're going to put up another. Oh, Lord. Hear that, Brent? Everybody's accusing. And we're good at that, aren't we?
Yes.
We're all good at accusing other folks. And that was the story Jesus was trying to tell us. He was telling us there are folks that are so good or think they're so good that they have to follow every single rule. Now, for some of us, when we were growing up, and as we grew up in the church as we tried. Some of us tried, but we just couldn't do it all. We couldn't do all the things that the churches required us to do. But on the outside, we could pretend we were. Think about it. If you went to the movies, you made sure you went on a night when the preacher or a deacon wasn't going to catch you there. If you went to the bar, you usually went to a different city. Why? You didn't want anybody that you went to church with catching you coming out of there. You're trying to keep up appearances, right? What do you think they said the Pharisee and the Levite were doing? Part of it was the ritual bath, and you couldn't touch blood, or you couldn't touch somebody from another particular culture than yours and stay pure. So that's all they were doing, trying to take care of their own folks. And sometimes we're guilty of that. As church people today, we reach out first of all for who? For those that are like us, for our own parishioners. You know, we hear these terrible things that happen in the world, but what we're most concerned with is ourselves and people like us. Are we all Sadducees and Pharisees and Levites? Or are we more like the Samaritan? And let's compare the Samaritan to the other folks. The Samaritans were Jewish. Did you know that? But they were a different type of Jewish folks. They were another denomination. They were left behind when Babylon came and captured everybody. And one of the things they did is intermarry with the people around there. So they were sexual deviants.
Yeah.
You guys think I'm kidding? I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and I was an American Indian. Whenever I went home to where my grandfather lived, people looked at me strangely, and we weren't allowed to go into a theater and sit on the main level. We had to go up to the balcony because there was a sign posted that said, Negroes and Indians balcony. Strange, huh? Did you all think of that? That there were folks like us that were discriminated against? You know what happened? My mama was Irish. And Indian, but mainly Irish. Blonde hair, blue eyes. My daddy was full-blooded Indian. How do I know? Because I look like him. Take my word for it. And people on both sides, both races, would tell us how wrong it was that they got married. And what were they really telling us? That my parents were sexual deviants and we were little demons that were being born. Those good Baptist folks, those good Pentecostal folks. Why, even the good Catholic folks were that way because, by God, if you married somebody that wasn't Catholic, you were being a sexual deviant. You were doing something that was against the rules. So these two guys just were trying to follow the rules. And now we have the Samaritan, a sexual deviant. Still was Jewish, still believed in God, still believed that no matter how people treated him, that he had a duty. And he had a duty to God, and he had a duty to other human beings. No matter what those human beings were. You notice we weren't told whether this poor man in the ditch was Jewish, Samaritan, Roman, Ephesian. We have no idea what he was. All we know is he was hurting and he needed help. The Samaritan broke his own religious laws. In my head, I have a feeling that the man that was preyed upon was probably a Roman, the enemy. And yet, he went down to help him. And he helped him more than most of us would think of helping people. You know, when we were in Chicago, Lord knows how many street people came up with us with a story that we needed this for that, and this for that. And Suzette did let me carry a little cash with me when we were there, and normally it was change. And I'd take it out of my pocket and I'd hand it to him and say, I'm sorry, that's all I could do. And then we'd ask ourselves questions. I wonder if they really needed help or if that's just the way they make their living.
Yeah.
How many of us do that? How many of us think that way? Does it really matter?
Doesn't matter if you're giving it from the
We
heart.
were doing God's work. I even caught Suzette giving $1 or $2 away. God is always there, helping those. But if somebody had asked me to put them up in that hotel we were staying in and take care of them, at $125 a night, I'd have to think twice, to tell you the truth. Aren't most of us like that? This guy didn't think twice. He took him to the closest place. He took care of him. He paid somebody else to take care of him. And the true question Jesus asked is, who is the disciple? Who is the one that did the right thing? Everybody agrees it was the Samaritan. But in that Pharisees and that Levi's heart, they did the right thing because see, they were on their way to church to serve their people. And they knew if they defiled themselves with this person in the ditch, they weren't allowed to serve the people. aren't all of us that way, in a certain way? Don't we all think 100 times what people will think of us? That's what they were doing. One of the things that I like about MCC, and going to the conference always reinforces this in my heart. MCC says we don't care who you are. You're welcome. We will do our very best to help you out. And I think that's true in a lot of ways, but then we get into this mode. And this is for each and every one of us. We get into this mode. Oh, I love my church. Lord, I know everybody in the pews. God, they make me so happy when they show up. I just want to hug them, you know? Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being part of my family. Well, then most people go ahead and bring somebody else in. Well, I don't know those folks. They didn't stop to introduce me to them. You know, I look around. There's at least one person I don't know other than on Facebook. Can I trust them? Can I trust them to be part of my family? How many people can I have in my family and still love them all? How many people can I have in my family that'll still know my name? How many people can I have in my family and will still be my friend? Now, I'm not saying this church is like that, right? Do I have an amen? Amen. We love to talk about growth. We love to talk about spreading the word of Jesus, about helping people, being people of justice. But if we're not warm and welcoming to everybody who walks through that door, and we don't accept them into our church for the gifts they bring, because guess what? God said all the gifts we need will be found in a church. I don't think we quite have them all yet. I think there's a few more gifts that can come through that door and we can accept. So I'm putting a challenge out to you, each and every one of you. You see, I want you to be a Samaritan. I want you to be a sexual deviant. What do you mean, preacher?
Yeah, what do you mean you got that kind of...
Yeah, we do.
How do we treat straight folks when they come to this church?
We should.
Do we?
We don't.
No, we don't. How do we treat children when we come into this church? How? All of them except TJ. If they are...
He's a teenager.
Teenager, man.
He's a teenager, and when he first came, he wasn't. He was a little boy.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing he wanted was for my grandsons to come, so they could go back there and tear everything up and have a good time. So they could sit together in a pew and make noise until Amy said, and TJ went back. Were we friendly to those kids? Did we realize that they're part of God's family? There's a real challenge out here for us, and we need to look at it. You know, we need to look at ourselves and say, am I a Samaritan? Or I am a Levite who wants to keep that family of God so small? Or am I a Pharisee and I have all the rules and regulations in my head? And I'm going to tell you what we can do and can't do? Or are we a Samaritan that simply says, you need us? Come on through the doors. I really want to see this church be as open as possible to all people.
Amen. Yes.
I want to see us here at MCC being MCC, caring about things, justice, caring about marriage equity, caring about a green earth, caring about children and how they're educated and what they need. That's what being church means. I want us to be more open to all people, no matter what their color, no matter what their sexuality, or no matter if there's no homosexuality at all. We need to be open. We need to be God's people. We need to be Samaritans. We need to be disciples, making disciples. We say that it's our mission to make disciples for Jesus Christ. How are we doing it? How are we being open to everybody? One of the things I hate most is to hear a new idea. A new one, no matter what it is, a new thought. And the first thing somebody says, oh, we tried that, it didn't work. Try it again. It's a new person who wants to do it. New energy that wants to do it. Try it again. It's my job to be the shepherd, to keep out the wolves. Guess what? I promise you I'll do that. But it's your job to be welcoming to everyone who comes in. Amen.
Amen.